The marriage certificate gleamed under the soft lighting of Dominic Blackwood's penthouse office. Outside, London's skyline sparkled against the night, a fitting backdrop for what he considered his masterpiece of revenge. Rain tapped against the floor-to-ceiling windows as he signed his name with calculated precision. "Everything's airtight," his attorney Julian confirmed, sliding the prenuptial agreement across the polished ebony desk. "After 12 months, you can dissolve the marriage. She receives exactly what we discussed, enough to seem generous, not enough to impact your fortune." Dominic nodded, studying the signature he'd just placed beside Valentina Moretti's delicate script. "And the Moretti family business? The shares you've been acquiring through proxies represent 28% ownership. After the merger announcement next quarter and your subsequent divorce, their stock will plummet. You'll be positioned to acquire controlling interest for pennies on the pound." Perfect. The plan had taken 18 months to orchestrate, from researching Valentina's habits at the Florence Art Gallery, where she curated exhibits, to the chance meeting at the London auction house, to the whirlwind romance conducted across European capitals. Every moment had been choreographed to make her fall for him. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Blackwood, Miss Moretti has arrived." Dominic straightened his tie, tucking away the documents as Valentina entered. At 32, she moved with natural grace, her olive skin glowing against her emerald dress. She carried a small package wrapped in brown paper. "I brought lunch from that little Italian place you pretend not to love," she teased, eyes sparkling with affection. Her slight Italian accent still pronounced certain words in ways that had become oddly endearing to him. "You shouldn't have," he replied, rising to kiss her cheek. "I wanted to surprise you." She unwrapped homemade cannoli and espresso in tiny ceramic cups. "You've been working too hard lately." If only she knew. The Moretti shipping empire had cost his father everything 15 years ago. Old Philip Blackwood had gone from shipping magnate to bankrupt alcoholic overnight after the Morettis allegedly sabotaged a crucial South American deal. His subsequent suicide had left 17-year-old Dominic with nothing but determination and a thirst for vengeance. "Actually," Dominic said, taking her hands, "we need to discuss something important." Valentina's smile faltered slightly. "What is it?" "The Tokyo expansion. I need to leave tomorrow for 2 weeks." Relief washed over her face. "That's all? I thought something was wrong between us." "Never," he lied smoothly. "Everything's proceeding exactly as planned." She squeezed his hands. "I've been thinking about our honeymoon house in Tuscany. What if we renovated the eastern wing into a studio? I could work there when you're handling business." Her genuine enthusiasm for their future tightened something in his chest. Dominic pushed the feeling aside, reminding himself of his father's broken body discovered in his study, the empire's collapse, the years of poverty and struggle. "Whatever makes you happy," he responded mechanically. Later, as Valentina left for a gallery appointment, Dominic watched her from the window. For just a moment, doubt crept into his perfect plan. But he banished it immediately. The Morettis would pay for what they'd done. And Valentina, innocent as she might seem, was the perfect instrument of that justice. In 7 more months, he would file for divorce, crush her family's company, and finally balance the scales that had tipped against the Blackwood name so many years ago. Yet, as thunder rolled across London, Dominic couldn't explain why victory suddenly tasted like ash in his mouth. 3 months into the marriage, Dominic found himself staring at the ceiling of their Mayfair townhouse at 3 a.m., listening to Valentina's soft breathing beside him. Sleep eluded him more frequently these days, his mind a battlefield of conflicting emotions. The quarterly reports from Moretti Shipping sat on his nightstand. Their stock had already weakened by 12%, following his strategic moves, planting rumors with key investors, redirecting 3 major clients through shell companies, and delaying the regulatory approval for their Mediterranean expansion. Everything was proceeding according to plan. So why did each victory feel increasingly hollow? Earlier that evening, they'd hosted a charity dinner for arts education, Valentina's passion project. He'd watched her work the room, championing underprivileged children with genuine fervor, her eyes lighting up as she described how art had saved her after her brother's death in a sailing accident years ago. "You're different with her, Julian," had commented, catching Dominic watching his wife from across the room. "I've never seen you look at anyone that way." "It's part of the performance," Dominic had replied automatically. But was it? The question haunted him now as Valentina stirred, in her sleep, instinctively curling closer to him. He found himself wrapping an arm around her slender shoulders, breathing in the jasmine scent of her hair. The morning light streamed through the windows as Valentina prepared breakfast, a simple ritual she insisted on despite their staff. Dominic watched her move about the kitchen, barefoot in silk pajamas, humming an Italian folk song. "My father called," she mentioned casually. "The Singapore deal is falling through." He sounded worried. Dominic nodded, guilt twisting unexpectedly in his stomach. He'd orchestrated that failure through contacts in the Maritime Authority. "Business has cycles," he offered neutrally. "I'm sure things will improve." Valentina set a plate before him, then pressed a kiss to his temple. "Having you in my life makes everything else manageable. Before you, I was just existing. Now I'm living." The genuine emotion in her voice struck him like a physical blow. The woman before him wasn't some faceless Moretti conspirator. She was Valentina, who left handwritten notes in his briefcase, who remembered how he liked his coffee, who challenged his cynicism with unfailing optimism. That afternoon, he canceled 2 meetings with the hedge fund manager's position to short Moretti's stock. Instead, he found himself at an antiquarian bookshop, purchasing a rare first edition of Valentina's favorite poetry collection. "You're losing focus," Julian warned during their weekly update. "The timing of the divorce filing is critical to maximize the damage." "I'm aware," Dominic snapped, more harshly than intended. Later, reviewing documents that would transfer Moretti's Pacific roots to his competitors, Dominic's hand hesitated over the signature line. For the first time in 15 years, he questioned whether vengeance was worth the cost, not to his finances or reputation, but to something deeper he hadn't realized still existed within him. That night, Valentina received news that her mother had suffered a minor stroke. Dominic held her as she cried and found himself making arrangements to fly them both to Florence immediately. Watching her grief, something shifted irreversibly inside him. The revenge he'd planned so meticulously suddenly seemed incomprehensible when weighed against the possibility of losing the truest thing in his life, her love, which he'd never intended to earn, yet somehow had. 2 months after Valentina left, Dominic sat in his corporate headquarters reviewing the quarterly results. Blackwood Industries had expanded aggressively, absorbing 3 shipping companies and establishing dominance in routes previously controlled by Moretti Shipping. The stock price had doubled. By any objective measure, he'd won. He felt nothing. "The board is impressed," Julian reported, setting down the latest financial projections. "The Moretti acquisition is proceeding as planned. They've lost their Mediterranean contracts, and their stock has fallen 67%. We can complete the hostile takeover within 60 days. Dominic stared through the rain-streaked windows at London's financial district. "What about the Singapore deal investigation?" Julian shifted uncomfortably. "As Ms. Moretti claimed, our researchers found no evidence linking Antonio Moretti to our company's downfall. He was indeed hospitalized during that period, and the contract went to Way Maritime, not Moretti Shipping. And my father's notes? Speculation and paranoia, apparently. The board minutes show he was already struggling with alcohol dependency and becoming increasingly erratic. He needed someone to blame. The truth landed like a hammer blow. 15 years of calculated hatred based on a fiction, a narrative, Dominic had constructed to make sense of senseless tragedy. "Cancel the Moretti acquisition," Dominic said quietly. "What?" "That's insane. We're on the verge of—" "Cancel it." His tone left no room for argument. "And get me everything you can on Valentina's current situation." The report arrived the next morning. Valentina had resigned from the gallery and moved back to Florence. Moretti Shipping was in financial freefall. Her father had suffered another heart attack from the stress. The family villa, their home for 5 generations, was being sold to cover mounting debts. All because of him. That afternoon, Dominic found himself at their favorite bookshop in Bloomsbury, where they'd spent countless Sundays browsing dusty shelves. The elderly proprietor recognized him immediately. "Mr. Blackwood." "No, Mrs. Blackwood today?" The innocent question felt like a knife. "No, not today." Shame. She ordered a book just arrived yesterday. The shopkeeper produced a carefully wrapped package. An illustrated Dante, first edition. Quite rare. Dominic remembered Valentina mentioning it months ago, a childhood favorite she'd been searching for. She must have ordered it before discovering his betrayal. "I'll take it," he said, throat tight with emotion, "and have it delivered to this address in Florence." That night, alone in their townhouse still filled with Valentina's presence, her books, her paintings, the lingering scent of jasmine, Dominic faced the wreckage of his life. On his desk sat the financial strategy that would save Moretti Shipping from bankruptcy using his own resources. Beside it lay divorce papers giving Valentina everything she was entitled to and more. What he couldn't include was the one thing that mattered, a way to undo the pain he'd caused. Outside, autumn leaves swirled in the wind. Somewhere in Florence, Valentina was rebuilding her life without him. And Dominic finally understood that some victories were indistinguishable from defeat. The revelation came like a thunderclap on a clear day. Valentina stood in Dominic's home office, papers trembling in her hands. She'd been searching for their passports for an upcoming anniversary trip when she'd accidentally opened the wrong drawer. Inside lay a meticulously labeled folder, Moretti Acquisition Strategy. "What is this?" she whispered as Dominic entered the room. Her voice was unnaturally calm, belying the storm in her eyes. Dominic froze, recognizing instantly the documents she held, the detailed timeline of his revenge plot, Julian's analysis of how the Moretti family could be financially destroyed, surveillance reports on Valentina from before they'd met, annotated in his own handwriting. "Valentina, I can explain." The words sounded pathetic even to his own ears. "Explain what?" "That our entire marriage was a business transaction?" She flipped through pages. "Subject frequents Bellini's Cafe Tuesday mornings. Approach with discussion. Of Caravaggio exhibit. That was our first meeting. You planned it." The color drained from her face as understanding dawned. Everything was calculated. The books we discussed, the coincidental second meeting in Paris, even your proposal at the lighthouse. It was all orchestrated. Dominic stepped forward, but she backed away. "It started that way," he admitted, "but things changed." "I changed. Why?" The single word contained all her pain. "What did we ever do to you?" "Your family destroyed mine," Dominic said, the justification sounding hollow now. "The Singapore shipping deal of 2009. Your father undercut mine, spread rumors about our financial stability. My father lost everything and took his own life." Valentina stared at him in disbelief. "The Singapore deal?" "My father was in hospital that entire quarter after his heart attack. Uncle Paulo handled all operations. And we lost that contract to Way Maritime, not Blackwood Shipping." The revelation hit Dominic like a physical blow. "That's not possible." "My father's notes, the board meeting minutes." "Check your facts," Valentina said bitterly. But it wouldn't have mattered, would it? You needed someone to blame, and we were convenient targets. She pulled her wedding ring from her finger, placing it on the desk with finality. 18 months of my life, given to a man who never existed. The man exists, Dominic insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. What I feel for you is real. Is it? Valentina asked, tears finally spilling. How would either of us know? Everything was built on lies. She gathered the damning documents. I'm leaving. Don't try to contact me. Valentina, please. You wanted to destroy my family? She turned at the doorway, her voice breaking. Congratulations, Dominic. You've succeeded beyond your wildest expectations. You've destroyed me completely. The door closed with devastating quietness. Dominic stood frozen, the magnitude of his mistake crushing him like an avalanche. The revenge that had driven him for 15 years suddenly seemed not just misguided, but monstrous. Outside, rain began to fall on London, washing away the last traces of spring. Dominic walked to the window, watching Valentina's car disappear into the downpour, taking with her the only genuine happiness he'd known since childhood. The victory he'd planned for so long had arrived. But as he stood alone in the gathering darkness, Dominic Blackwood realized he'd lost the only battle that truly mattered. Part 4. Hollow Victory. 2 months after Valentina left, Dominic sat in his corporate headquarters, reviewing the quarterly results. Blackwood Industries had expanded aggressively, absorbing 3 shipping companies and establishing dominance in routes previously controlled by Moretti Shipping. The stock price had doubled. By any objective measure, he'd won. He felt nothing. Play. Board is impressed, Julian reported, setting down the latest financial projections. The Moretti acquisition is proceeding as planned. They've lost their Mediterranean contracts, and their stock has fallen 67%. We can complete the hostile takeover within 60 days. Dominic stared through the rain-streaked windows at London's financial district. What about the Singapore deal investigation? Julian shifted uncomfortably. As Ms. Moretti claimed, our researchers found no evidence linking Antonio Moretti to our company's downfall. He was indeed hospitalized during that period, and the contract went to Way Maritime, not Moretti Shipping. And my father's notes? Speculation and paranoia, apparently. The board minutes show he was already struggling with alcohol dependency and becoming increasingly erratic. He needed someone to blame. The truth landed like a hammer blow. 15 years of calculated hatred based on a fiction, a narrative, Dominic had constructed to make sense of senseless tragedy. Cancel the Moretti acquisition, Dominic said quietly. What? That's insane. We're on the verge of cancel it. His tone left no room for argument. And get me everything you can on Valentina's current situation. The report arrived the next morning. Valentina had resigned from the gallery and moved back to Florence. Moretti Shipping was in financial freefall. Her father had suffered another heart attack from the stress. The family villa, their home for 5 generations, was being sold to cover mounting debts, all because of him. That afternoon, Dominic found himself at their favorite bookshop in Bloomsbury, where they'd spent countless Sundays browsing dusty shelves. The elderly proprietor recognized him immediately. Mr. Blackwood. No Mrs. Blackwood today? The innocent question felt like a knife. No, not today. Shame. She ordered a book just arrived yesterday. The shopkeeper produced a carefully wrapped package. An illustrated Dante, first edition. Quite rare. Dominic remembered Valentina mentioning it months ago. A childhood favorite she'd been searching for. She must have ordered it before discovering his betrayal. I'll take it, he said, throat tight with emotion, and have it delivered to this address in Florence. That night, alone in their townhouse still filled with Valentina's presence, her books, her paintings, the lingering scent of jasmine, Dominic faced the wreckage of his life. On his desk sat the financial strategy that would save Moretti Shipping from bankruptcy, using his own resources. Beside it lay divorce papers giving Valentina everything she was entitled to, and more. What he couldn't include was the one thing that mattered, a way to undo the pain he'd caused. Outside, autumn leaves swirled in the wind. Somewhere in Florence, Valentina was rebuilding her life without him. And Dominic finally understood that some victories were indistinguishable from defeat. Florence basked in spring sunshine as Dominic walked through Piazza della Signoria, rehearsing words that seemed woefully inadequate. 6 months had passed since Valentina left London. 6 months of correcting his grievous errors anonymously, stabilizing Moretti Shipping through third-party investments, ensuring Antonio Moretti received the best cardiac specialists, quietly withdrawing all legal actions against their company. None of it erased what he'd done. The small gallery where Valentina now worked came into view. Through the window, he could see her arranging sculptures, sunlight catching her dark hair. She'd lost weight, and something of her natural vibrancy seemed dimmed. He'd caused that. Dominic hesitated at the entrance, courage faltering, a voice behind him spoke in Italian-accented English. "She won't see you." He turned to find Sofia Moretti, Valentina's younger sister, watching him with undisguised contempt. "I need to apologize," Dominic said simply. "Apologize?" Sofia's laugh was bitter. "For nearly destroying our family? For breaking my sister's heart? Some things can't be fixed with words, Mr. Blackwood." "I know." He handed her an envelope. "These are documents transferring controlling shares of Blackwood's Mediterranean division to Moretti Shipping. No conditions, no hidden clauses. It's a small reparation." Sophia examined the papers skeptically. "Why?" "Because I was wrong. About everything." The admission cost him nothing now. Truth was all he had left. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want Valentina to know she wasn't part of some transaction to me. Not in the end." Sophia studied him for a long moment. "The anonymous investor who saved our company, that was you?" Dominic nodded. "Wait here," she said finally, disappearing into the gallery. Minutes stretched into an eternity before the door opened again. Valentina emerged, her expression carefully neutral. "You shouldn't have come," she said quietly. "I know." Dominic maintained his distance, respecting the gulf between them. "I've spent 6 months trying to undo what I did, knowing it's impossible. The company, your father's treatment, it doesn't balance the scales. Nothing could." Her voice held. "No anger now, only resignation." "I discovered something after you left," Dominic continued. "My father's problems weren't caused by your family. He created his own downfall and invented enemies to blame. I continued that legacy of hatred without questioning it." Valentina's expression softened slightly. "Sophia told me what you did for our company. It was the least I could do." He paused, finding unexpected difficulty in continuing. "I don't expect another chance, Valentina, but you deserve the truth. What began as deception became the most honest thing in my life. I fell in love with you. That was never part of the plan." She looked away, blinking rapidly. "How could I ever trust that? Trust you? You can't." "I wouldn't." Dominic took a deep breath. "I'm selling the company. Starting over. Whatever I build next will have a different foundation." Surprise flickered across her face. "Blackwood Industries is your life's work." "No," he corrected gently. "It was my father's obsession and my misguided crusade. My life's work should have been loving you properly." He turned to leave, having said what he came to say. Behind him, Valentina spoke again. "The rare Dante you sent. How did you know I still wanted it?" Dominic smiled sadly. "You mentioned once. It was the book your brother read to you when you were frightened." That some stories remind us even the darkest journey can lead back to light. Something shifted in her expression. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps its distant possibility. "I have a coffee break in 20 minutes, she said carefully. "There's a cafe across the square." "I'll be there," Dominic promised Dot as he walked away. Florence's Renaissance splendor surrounded him, a city built on the ashes of medieval darkness, transformed through centuries of atonement and rebirth. Perhaps some debts could never be fully repaid, some wounds never completely healed. But as spring blossoms fell around him like benedictions, Dominic understood that redemption wasn't found in grand gestures or complete absolution. It lived in small moments of truth, in the painful work of rebuilding, in the courage to begin again without guarantees. 20 minutes. It wasn't much, but it was somewhere to start.